All right, so we're recording, and I just wanted to explain a little bit more about carrying capacity. It's going to be a weird video because there's no visuals; it's all going to be audio. Um, but it is, carrying capacity can be a very complicated thing. So for this discussion, I just really want to simplify it and give like a very simplified example. Um, of course, we know that the carrying capacity is basically the number, like the size of the population that any given environment can sustain. And
Right.
usually that also refers to not just humans but any species that you're studying, right? So if an ecologist is studying, I don't know, the wolves in the Yellowstone Park, Yellowstone National Park, they would look at the carrying capacity of that population. But for this discussion, we're just concerned with humans, right? So we're only talking about humans. And of course, when we're talking about the resources, right, you need resources, natural resources to sustain the human population. But again, for this example, for our discussion, I'm going to make it even more simple, right? So let's forget about the fact that humans need all these different types of food, and we need water, we need clean air, and we need shelter, we need a place to put our waste, right? All these things that humans need. For the sake of this conversation that you and I are having in this example, let's just focus on food, right? So let's just pretend humans only need food. Now imagine that there's an island. There's an island out in the middle of nowhere, and there's some humans that live on that island. Maybe those are the only humans on Earth. Like we could pretend maybe that the entire Earth is just one big ocean, and there's only this one tiny island that holds the entire human population, right? And we're looking at
Mhm.
food. So on this island, there's this given area, right? Let's call it, I don't know, 100 acres. I'm just making that number up. Let's just say there's 100 acres on that island that they use to produce food, right? So that's the carrying capacity is based on that in this simplified example, right? So we have those 100 acres, and let's say it produces 1,000 tons of food per year for the population. Okay, does that make sense so far?
Mhm.
Okay, so let's say this is also hypothetical because this hasn't happened yet, but let's assume too that this population on this island is at carrying capacity, right? So they're eating that 1,000 pounds of food that it produces every year, and they're sustaining it. But because they're at carrying capacity, the human population can't grow, right? It's right there. There's not enough resources for the human population to grow. So let's assume we want to increase the carrying capacity. What we're talking about is increasing the amount of resources that those humans can get on that island, right? So using that as an example, there's a few things we could do. First of all, there's only 100 acres that it's being used to create food. So one thing you could do is maybe find more areas on that island to create more food, right? Because in that sense, now you've increased the carrying capacity because you've increased the amount of food that you're producing. Likewise, you could better use those 100 acres, right? So maybe you can't find another 100 acres to use, but you could better utilize those 100 acres. Maybe you're using fertilizer, maybe you're using a better farming technique, maybe you're using better crops that withstand uh, the conditions on that island. Whatever it is, you could, instead of expanding your farmland, you could just make it better, make it produce more on the same amount of land. Does that part make sense?
Yes.
Okay, good. Another thing you might be able to do and is maybe utilize improve how the people are utilizing it, right? So maybe, like I said, that given area of land, it produces 1,000 pounds of food, 1,000 pounds of food a year, or whatever my hypothetical number was. Now, let's say, due to the way they're doing their farming and transporting, maybe 100 pounds of that every year is lost to waste. So you could increase your carrying capacity by utilizing what is being produced more. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Oh, okay, yeah. So what I'm saying here is it's all about, as far as this simplified conversation that we're having, this simplified example, all about just increasing the resources. How can we increase the resources? Now, I loved your idea. Your idea, what you wrote down, would be very good if this was like some kind of class about economics or
Right.
political science class or something like that. Like your idea was great. And I won't go into detail with it to save you time, and because you wrote it in the time of anybody watching this video. But I think it's safe to say the basic way to describe what you suggested was basically give people more money, right? Or make sure that they can get the resources, right, that are being produced. What, is that safe to say?
It was to have people supply an additional amount to the budget, right, so that they could,
Right. Yeah. Okay.
receive those resources. But the second
Perfect.
part was having people agree to maintain a certain family size unit. That's part of, reducing
Mm,
population growth to
okay.
help carrying
I'm so
capacity,
glad
right?
oh, sorry. I keep cutting you off because of the time lag. I'm sorry. I'm so glad you said that. Two reasons. First of all, well, I'll come back to that. I'll address what you last said here in a second because that's really important as far as you're concerned. But as far as this video is concerned, let's pretend like you didn't just say that last part.
Okay.
As far as the video is concerned, so increasing the amount of money and making sure that people get fed. I mean, that helps, and that's a good thing. But if we're just strictly focused on carrying capacity, and that is the goal of that discussion, option one
Right.
is to demonstrate you understand how carrying capacity works. With that being said, then making sure people have enough money, like SNAP, for example, or WIC, things like that, it actually wouldn't do anything for carrying capacity, right? Because again, just using that one farm or that one island as an example, like
Right.
this land is producing 1,000 pounds or tons, whatever I said, of food per year, and doesn't matter if people can afford it or not. That's how much is being produced. If anything, if people could afford more, then they might be using more, and then they might be using that food um, quicker than it's being produced. So
Right. So
that's where I
just
want
because
to.
they put more money into it doesn't mean they're going to get more resource out of it, pretty much.
Right. Well,
Okay.
yeah. If they just because they're putting more money into the people, the consumer. Now, if we're going to get it a little bit deeper and make this example a little bit less simple, a little bit more complicated, that could be a way you could increase carrying capacity. It kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. If you were to put more money into that one farm that those people had, sure, right? Because then you might be able to get, again, like I said, better farming techniques. So, hey, we're going to throw more money to better cultivate this 100 acres of land that we have. But okay, so as far as my example to explain carrying capacity
Right.
in this context, as far as that's concerned, I'm done with the example. But I want to come back to what you said previously. But before we come back to what you said previously about population size, do you have any questions just about the carrying capacity example? Because if not, I'm going to stop recording because I think that pretty much summed it up. Unless you have questions.
No, sir.
All right, so let me stop recording.